Seller humiliates black wheelchair-bound customer, but panics when he discovers he is the new owner of the store. On a sunny morning in New York, a man quietly enters the modern sneaker store, Stride and Soul. He is Marcus Evans, a respected businessman in the sports industry who prefers to keep his identity a secret. At 42 years old, and with a wheelchair as his companion, Marcus has a steady gaze and unwavering patience. Disguised in simple clothing, he decides to test the service of the store he has just acquired, without anyone knowing who he really is. As he approaches the running shoe section, Marcus catches the attention of a young salesman, Kyle Thompson, who hesitates to assist him. Kyle, 24 years old, is ambitious and sees his job merely as a stepping stone to something greater. He observes Marcus and, noting that he is in a wheelchair, quickly judges him, thinking that he could not be a serious customer. Kyle's prejudice manifests in his words and actions as he suggests that Marcus should look for a section more suitable for his needs. Surprised and disappointed by the response, Marcus decides to keep his identity secret for now. The tension escalates when Sarah Hill, a supervisor who knows Marcus personally, notices the interaction. Approaching and intervening, she reveals Marcus's identity to Kyle, who is paralyzed upon realizing the mistake he has made. From this shock, an opportunity for transformation arises. Marcus decides not to retaliate, but rather to teach a valuable lesson about respect and inclusion. He proposes a conversation with Kyle and the store manager, challenging the young man to rethink his attitude. This interaction not only brings to light the vulnerabilities of both characters, but also opens the door to a new beginning. Marcus, who has always dreamed of creating an environment where everyone feels respected and included, finds himself facing a challenge that goes beyond his professional ambitions. He wants his stores to be examples of inclusion while also confronting the difficulties of being a black man in a society that often judges by appearance. The initial encounter with Kyle transforms into an important turning point, where a simple act of disrespect becomes an opportunity for change and reflection. With this experience, Marcus seeks not only to transform Kyle's life, but also his own, reaffirming his belief that everyone deserves a fair chance. The story of Marcus and Kyle is a journey of overcoming life lessons and the quest for a more respectful and inclusive world. The impact of their interactions resonates beyond the store, challenging both to rethink their beliefs and how they connect with others. As the narrative unfolds, it becomes clear that true success does not lie solely in material achievements, but in the ability to turn challenges into opportunities and build relationships based on respect. Marcus Evans sat in his wheelchair, observing the Stride and Soul store with a critical eye. The vibrant environment was filled with excited customers, but he felt somewhat isolated. The incident with Kyle was still fresh in his mind, and he couldn't help but feel disheartened. The lack of respect he had faced was an echo of a larger problem he had witnessed throughout his career. For many, first impressions meant everything, and this often led to the exclusion of those who did not fit common standards. Meanwhile, Kyle was in the back room, struggling with his own emotional turmoil. He had grown up in a neighborhood where ambition was a distant dream for many. Working at the sneaker store was his first step toward a brighter future, but his insecurity led him to judge people quickly, as if his own validation depended on it. Now he found himself in an embarrassing situation, knowing he had made a serious mistake. The revelation of Marcus's identity left him with the feeling that he had lost an opportunity to do something meaningful. He wondered how he could reverse this situation while also dealing with the shame that consumed him. Sarah Hill, the supervisor, was also perplexed. Knowing Marcus and his story, she worried about the impact this experience would have on him. She understood how hard he fought to break down barriers and promote inclusion in his company. Sarah decided to intervene, but felt that words might not be enough to remedy the situation. She wanted to protect Marcus, but also needed to help Kyle understand the gravity of his mistake. Marcus, for his part, was torn. The desire to make his voice heard and teach Kyle a lesson was strong, but he also felt the emotional pressure of being an example. He knew that his personal journey was not just about him, but about all those who struggled against similar prejudices. He remembered moments when he felt invisible, devalued, simply because of his condition and skin color. Now, the idea of transforming this experience into a learning opportunity appealed to him, but it also carried an immense weight. The interaction with Kyle made him question the strength he had within himself. He wondered, can I really make a difference in the life of someone who doesn't know my suffering? This doubt lingered as he tried to find words that could touch the young salesman's heart. Marcus knew that for Kyle to learn, he needed to feel comfortable and safe. The internal struggle of Marcus was palpable. He wanted the conversation to be impactful, but at the same time feared that his own emotions would leave him vulnerable. Kyle, upon noticing Marcus's gaze, began to feel even smaller. He struggled with the idea that his ambition might have caused an irreparable wound. The possibility of having missed a chance to learn from someone so influential left him restless. He wanted to redeem himself, but he didn't know how to approach the situation without seeming condescending. The pressure was mounting, and every passing minute felt like a reminder of his failure. Meanwhile, Sarah decided it was time to act. She approached both of them, trying to mediate the conversation. "Marcus, maybe you could share your story with Kyle. He needs to understand the importance of respecting each client's individuality, no matter how they appear. This could change his perspective." Marcus nodded, recognizing the sincerity in Sarah's words. He took a deep breath and decided it was time to turn his disappointment into a life lesson. "Kyle, I understand you may have judged the situation too quickly. We all make mistakes, but it's essential to remember that each person has a unique story. Mine isn't visible at first glance, but that doesn't diminish my worth as a customer or as a human being. What you did was disrespectful, but I am here to help you understand that." Marcus's words echoed in the silent store, and Kyle felt the gravity of the situation. He was facing a man who had not only overcome physical challenges, but social ones as well. The weight of Marcus's words hit him like a wave, and he realized he had an opportunity in front of him, the chance to learn and grow as an individual. The tension among the three began to dissipate as the conversation progressed. Each of them was on a path of self-discovery, and the interaction became a safe space to reflect on their beliefs and values. By sharing his story, Marcus not only challenged Kyle to rethink his attitudes, but also reminded himself of the transformative power of empathy. And so the journey of overcoming and learning unfolded, with each of them committing to be more respectful and inclusive in their lives. Marcus sat in his wheelchair, his gaze fixed on Kyle, who was trying to absorb the words he had just heard. The atmosphere in the Stride and Soul store had changed. The chatter of customers felt distant now, as if the world around them had faded away, leaving just the three of them in focus. The weight of the conversation hung in the air, and Marcus felt that each word he spoke was a seed that might or might not take root in the young salesperson's mind. Kyle's heart raced. He knew he had hurt Marcus, but he didn't fully understand the depth of what that mistake meant. He looked at the man who, despite his physical limitations, exuded a strength Kyle had never found within himself. Insecurity paralyzed him, but at the same time a small spark of determination began to ignite within him. "I want to learn," Kyle thought, but doubt enveloped him like a heavy fog. "What if I fail again?" Sarah, sensing the growing tension, decided to intervene once more. "Kyle, you can start by being honest about how you feel. This could open up a space for Marcus to share more as well. Vulnerability can be a big step toward change." The supervisor knew that empathy was the key to transforming the situation, and she hoped both of them could connect on a deeper level. Kyle took a deep breath. "Marcus, I'm sorry. I didn't think before I acted. I just looked at you and judged. I know that's not right, and I really want to understand. How do you cope with all of this?" Kyle's words were a mix of sincerity and fear. He felt vulnerable, exposed. Marcus noticed the hesitation in the young man, but also a spark of sincerity. The interaction was shaping into something more meaningful, and this gave Marcus a new perspective. He decided this was the moment to share a more intimate part of his story, a side that was often forgotten. "I have always loved running," Marcus began, his voice soft yet firm. "When I was younger, I participated in races and dreamed of going far, but an accident took that possibility away from me. After my injury, the biggest battle wasn't just with physical pain, but with the pain of being treated as less than I am." He paused, observing Kyle's reaction. "People often look at me and don't see what I'm thinking or feeling. They only see the wheelchair." Kyle felt a knot in his throat. He had never considered the impact of his actions on someone like Marcus. Empathy began to blossom within him, but shame still weighed on his heart. "I didn't know. I only saw the chair and not the person. How do you keep moving forward?" The words came out like a whisper, almost as if he feared that any louder sound would break the connection that was beginning to form. Marcus looked at Kyle with a mix of compassion and understanding. "I fight every day." Every time someone looks at me with disdain or ignores me, it's a challenge. But I choose not to let that define me. What helps me is remembering that everyone has their battles. When you judge, you don't see the whole picture, and that's a loss for you and for others. The conversation flowed, and the three were now in a safer space. Sarah, watching everything, felt hopeful. She knew this exchange could be a turning point for both young men, but at the same time, a new challenge arose. A group of customers approached, and one of them, an older man, made a sarcastic comment about Marcus's wheelchair, laughing and drawing everyone's attention. The tension rose again, and Marcus felt his heart race. He looked at Kyle, hoping the young man would react differently this time. What would happen if Kyle chose to remain silent? Marcus's internal battle intensified. He wanted Kyle to stand up for respect, but he also knew the young man was still learning. The idea of yet another disappointment left him on the verge of tears, but he took a deep breath, trying to find the strength to deal with the situation. Kyle, noticing the shift in the atmosphere, felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He didn't want Marcus to feel undervalued again. "Hey," he said, his voice firm. "This isn't funny. Marcus is an incredible person, and you should respect him like anyone else." The older man looked surprised, but Kyle didn't back down, maintaining a steady gaze. Kyle's courage surprised everyone, including himself. Marcus felt a warmth in his chest. The desire to see Kyle grow and learn was unfolding before his eyes. The connection between them deepened, and the space that had once been tense was now becoming fertile ground for transformation. Before we continue with this exciting story, take a moment to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories. And let us know in the comments which city you're watching this video from. In that moment, they were not just a customer, a seller, and a supervisor. They were three human beings on a journey of self-discovery and learning, facing the challenges that life imposed on them together. Marcus's struggle became a source of inspiration, and Kyle was gradually transforming into an ally. Their journey was just beginning, but empathy had planted the seed for a brighter future. The tension in the Stride and Soul store reached a new level when the older man made his sarcastic comment. The silence that followed was almost palpable, as if the air around them had thickened. Marcus, always so strong and resilient, felt his heart race. He knew the situation was about to change, but he wasn't sure how. Kyle, however, didn't hesitate. He turned to the man, his voice firm and clear. The words that came from his mouth were more than a defense. They were a milestone in his own journey. "This isn't funny. Marcus is an incredible person, and you should respect him like anyone else." The young man was surprised by his own courage, but the older man merely looked at him with disdain, as if Kyle's response didn't matter at all. Marcus watched the scene with a mix of pride and anxiety. He had never expected Kyle to react that way. The determination in the young man's eyes was a reflection of the transformation taking place within him, and at the same time there was a growing fear. What if Kyle was ignored? What if the man reacted aggressively? However, seeing the firmness in Kyle's eyes, a spark of hope began to shine in his heart. The older man seemed about to respond, but Sarah quickly intervened. "Let's all remember that respect is fundamental. We are here to support each other, not to belittle anyone." Her voice was calm but firm, which helped dissipate the tension. The man, realizing he had no support, stepped back, murmuring something inaudible. The atmosphere in the store began to calm, but the impact of what had happened still lingered in the air. Kyle turned to Marcus, his expression a mix of relief and vulnerability. I didn't know if I could say anything, but when I heard you being belittled, something inside me just reacted." He was breathless, as if he had run an emotional marathon. "It was like I was seeing you in a new way. I realized I can't just stay silent when I see something wrong." Marcus smiled, his eyes shining with gratitude. "You did what many wouldn't have the courage to do, Kyle. That's a sign of growth. You're learning to see beyond the surface, and that's valuable." The conversation that followed was filled with emotion. Kyle began to share his own insecurities, his internal struggles, and how the situation with Marcus had deeply affected him. He talked about how he feared being judged, failing again, and how that paralyzed him. Marcus, in turn, revealed more about his daily battles, not just with physical limitations, but with how people saw and treated him. It was at that moment that Marcus realized that true overcoming was not just about facing the challenges life threw at him, but also about finding the strength to be vulnerable and share his story. He understood that by opening his heart, he was not only freeing himself from his own fears, but also inspiring Kyle to do the same. The connection between the two deepened, and for a brief moment, the store seemed to fade away. The noise around them faded, and they were caught in a world where empathy and understanding were the only things that mattered. Kyle's revelation, and the acceptance of his flaws and fears, was a turning point. He realized that success wasn't just about being perfect or never failing, but about getting up every time he fell and learning from each experience. When the conversation came to an end, both felt lighter. The event that could have been a source of shame and pain transformed into a moment of growth and learning. Marcus knew that the journey was far from over, but now he had an ally by his side. And Kyle, in turn, began to understand that true strength was not in avoiding failures, but in facing them and using each one as an opportunity to become a better version of himself. Life in the Stride and Soul store seemed to have changed forever, and both Marcus and Kyle were ready to face whatever came next, together. The friendship that was blossoming between them was a testament that, even amidst challenges, human connection and empathy could create a space where overcoming was possible and where both could thrive. The conversation between Marcus and Kyle had a profound effect on both of them. In the following days, Marcus felt different. The courage that Kyle had shown inspired him to face his own challenges in a new way. He decided that he would no longer hide behind his limitations. Instead, he wanted to be an example for others, showing that strength was not just physical, but also emotional. However, this new determination did not come without its difficulties. The next day, upon returning to the store, Marcus noticed that the atmosphere was still tense. Some people who had witnessed the scene from the previous day were still exchanging furtive glances, as if they wanted to discuss what had happened. He felt the weight of judgment, and it made his heart race. It was a new kind of battle, an internal one, where he needed to convince himself that he shouldn't care about others' opinions. While organizing some products on the shelf, Marcus overheard a conversation a few meters away. Two women were commenting on the incident, laughing sarcastically. That laughter felt like a knife in his chest. He wanted to walk away, but Kyle's voice echoed in his mind. It was time to be strong. With a deep breath, he approached them. "Hi, I'm Marcus," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I heard what you were saying." The women stopped, surprised. One of them, with brown hair, opened her mouth to respond, but Marcus didn't give her space. "I just wanted to say that behind every laugh, there's a story. I have my struggles and I know you have yours too. Instead of laughing, we should support each other." The women exchanged glances, and the expression on the older woman's face began to change. Although still a bit taken aback, they murmured apologies. Marcus felt a mix of relief and nervousness. He had spoken, but there was still a long way to go. In the following days, Marcus's relationship with Kyle strengthened. They began to meet more often, sharing experiences, fears, and dreams. Kyle revealed that he also felt insecure, especially regarding his future career. Marcus, in turn, shared about his childhood and the difficulties he faced over the years. The empathy between them grew, helping them to deal with their own obstacles. However, new challenges arose. Marcus began to notice that although he felt more confident, there were still many judgmental looks directed at him. He had to learn to cope with that. In a moment of reflection, while walking through the store, he remembered a piece of advice his grandmother had once given him. "The opinions of others do not define who you are." Those words encouraged him to keep moving forward. One day, while watching a dance performance in the store, Marcus noticed a young girl who seemed as insecure as he had once been. She was hesitant, looking at the ground, afraid to expose herself. Remembering his own journey, he decided to approach her. "You're doing a great job," he said, smiling. "Dancing is about expressing yourself and feeling free. Don't worry about what others think." The young girl looked at him, surprised. "Do you really think so?" "Absolutely. We all have something unique to offer the world. Don't let fear hold you back from shining." The interaction brought a new light to Marcus. He realized that every time he helped someone, his own confidence grew. He was not just overcoming his insecurities, he was becoming a source of support for others. Over time, he started organizing small meetups in the store where people could share their stories and challenges. The idea was to create a safe space where everyone could feel free to be who they really were. Kyle joined him in this endeavor, and together they turned the store, Stride and Soul, into a place of welcome and empathy. However, not everything was easy. Some people still opposed the idea of vulnerability and openness. They faced criticism and even rumors. But instead of being shaken, Marcus and Kyle supported each other. They learned to see each obstacle as an opportunity for growth. Marcus's journey was far from perfect, but now he had tools and allies. He understood that true strength was not the absence of fear, but the ability to face it head-on. He not only began to heal, but also helped others to do the same. The connection he had formed with Kyle and the people around him became a beacon in his life, illuminating the path to overcoming challenges and true friendship. Marcus was at a crucial point in his life. The conversation he had with Kyle had planted a seed of courage within him, but the reality of day-to-day life often pulled him back to his insecurities. He was tired of hiding behind his limitations and wanted more than just to exist. He wanted to live fully and meaningfully. In the following days, while organizing products in the store, Marcus realized that the atmosphere was still heavy. The laughter he had heard earlier echoed in his mind, and he struggled against the temptation to be affected by it. However, instead of shrinking away, he made a decision. He would face any judgment with dignity. He remembered his grandmother's words, who always taught him to value his true essence. It was on one of those days, as he prepared for another journey of self-discovery, that a young customer caught his attention. She had a sad and hesitant look, as if she were trapped in an internal battle. It was possible to see her struggling against her fears, and it made Marcus's heart ache. He remembered how he himself had felt that way, and decided to approach her. "Hi, how are you?" "I'm Marcus," he said with an encouraging smile. "You're dancing really well." The young girl looked up, surprised. "Do you really think so? I'm not as good as the others." Marcus remembered his own journey of insecurity. Dance is not about being perfect. It's about expressing yourself and feeling free. We all have something unique to offer. Don't worry about what others think. The young woman smiled shyly, and Marcus felt a wave of satisfaction. The interaction not only helped the young woman feel better, but also brought a new sense of purpose to him. Every time he opened up to help someone, his own confidence grew. He was not just overcoming his insecurities, but becoming a light in the lives of others. Over time, the store Stride and Soul transformed into a welcoming space. Marcus and Kyle began organizing gatherings where people could share their stories and challenges. That idea grew, and soon the store became a refuge for those seeking support. However, not everything was smooth sailing. Some people criticized the vulnerability approach they promoted, and rumors began to circulate. Instead of allowing themselves to be discouraged, Marcus and Kyle united. They learned to face criticism as a test of their determination. Each obstacle became an opportunity for growth. Marcus began to realize that success was not measured by the amount of sales in the store or by popularity, but by the impact they were having on people's lives. He reflected on what truly mattered to him. What once seemed like a quest for external validation was now transforming into a genuine desire to help others. This new perspective changed his worldview. He realized that true wealth lay in the experiences and connections he formed, not in material possessions. Marcus faced his fears head-on. He began to accept himself, to value his struggles, and to understand that each failure was an opportunity for a fresh start. Growth was not linear. There were ups and downs, but each step forward brought him closer to who he truly wanted to be. He learned to be kind to himself, to accept that the journey of overcoming challenges is full of hurdles. Over time, he began to apply the lessons he learned in his own life. He became an advocate for empathy, encouraging more people to open up and share their stories. With each gathering, new friendships emerged, and the support network grew. The friendship between Marcus and Kyle strengthened, and the two became pillars for each other. Marcus looked back and realized how his journey had transformed him. He had faced his greatest challenges, both internal and external, and each one shaped him. He was no longer the insecure young man he used to be. He had become an example of resilience and hope for those around him. He now understood that life was a series of ups and downs, but it was how he dealt with those challenges that defined who he was. Marcus had found his place in the world, and it made him feel truly alive. The day was sunny, but the atmosphere in the Stride and Soul store was tense. Marcus and Kyle had planned a big event for the weekend, a celebration of community and personal growth. But as the day approached, rumors began to circulate. Some people openly criticized the idea of a space where vulnerabilities were shared, and this began to affect Marcus's confidence. He found himself at the center of an emotional storm, struggling against the doubt that tried to settle in his mind. On the morning of the event, Marcus looked in the mirror and saw his reflection. The insecure young man who once hid behind his limitations seemed like a distant shadow. However, anxiety still consumed him. He knew it was important to face this challenge, but uncertainty left him paralyzed. Kyle entered the room, noticing the worried expression on his friend's face. "Are you ready for this?" Kyle asked with an encouraging look. Marcus took a deep breath. "I am. But what if people don't like it? What if all of this is a failure?" Kyle smiled, a smile that reflected friendship and unconditional support. "Remember what you always say. The true measure of success is not how others evaluate it, but how you feel about doing something meaningful. Let's show them the power of vulnerability." Kyle's words resonated powerfully within Marcus. He realized that this was the moment to apply everything he had learned. He could not let fear take over. With a new sense of determination, he decided to face that challenge with his head held high. The event began, and the store was filled with people. There was laughter, music, and an atmosphere that exuded warmth. However, as soon as Marcus stepped onto the stage, he felt a knot in his stomach. He looked at the crowd and saw familiar faces, but also some that wore expressions of doubt. He took a deep breath, trying to ignore the pressure. "Hi everyone, thank you for being here today," Marcus began, his voice trembling slightly. "Today we are going to celebrate our stories, our struggles, and our strength. I want everyone to feel free to share what they feel." At first, silence hung in the air. Then one voice rose. It was the young woman he had helped a few days ago. "I'm Clara," she said hesitantly. "I used to be afraid to dance, but you told me that dance was about freedom. Today I want to dance here in front of you." Marcus's heart swelled with pride. Clara stepped onto the stage and began to dance. Her movements were awkward but full of emotion. Soon the audience began to applaud, and the energy in the room shifted. Others started to feel inspired, and in an instant, more voices rose. "I'm Lucas, and I used to be ashamed to speak in public, but today I want to share my story." What started as a moment of vulnerability transformed into a wave of courage. Marcus watched, moved, as each person shared their experiences. The event was no longer about what others thought, but about the connection they were forming with one another. As the stories continued, Marcus felt a weight being lifted off his shoulders. He realized that what truly mattered was the impact they were having on each other's lives. The criticisms and rumors became insignificant in the face of the collective strength they were creating. When the event came to an end, Marcus felt renewed. He had not only overcome his fear, he had discovered his true inner strength. He turned to Kyle, who was beside him, and said, "That was incredible. We did this together." Kyle smiled. "You did this, Marcus. You allowed yourself to be vulnerable, and that inspired all of us." In that moment, Marcus understood that success was not measured by applause or external evaluations, but by the courage to be authentic and the ability to touch the lives of others. He had found his voice and, more importantly, had helped others find theirs. The event became a landmark in Marcus's life and in the store's community. The friendship between him and Kyle solidified even more, and together they continued to create a safe space for everyone to express themselves. The journey of overcoming had just begun, and Marcus was ready for any challenges that lay ahead. He had learned that even in difficulties, the light of vulnerability and connection could shine brighter than any criticism, and thus he became a true beacon of hope for those around him. After the event, the atmosphere in the Stride and Soul store changed completely. The voices that were once critical had now turned into murmurs of support and encouragement. Marcus and Kyle watched as people gathered in small groups, sharing laughter and stories. What had started as a day of insecurity and fear had now transformed into a vibrant celebration of community. Marcus felt warmth in his chest as he saw Clara surrounded by other young people, all dancing together. Her eyes sparkled with joy as she shared how dance had helped her feel free. That scene was far from what he had imagined at the beginning of the day. The insecurity that had dominated him was replaced by a feeling of accomplishment and belonging. He realized that by opening up and allowing others to express themselves, he had created a space where everyone could be authentic. Kyle approached him with a wide smile. "Look at this, Marcus. You made this happen. People are connecting in a way I've never seen before." Marcus nodded, still processing the emotions that were overwhelming him. "I was so afraid of what others thought, but now I see that it doesn't matter. What matters is how we feel when we are together." The day continued to flow with activities, from art workshops to group dances. Each new interaction seemed to strengthen the bonds between the participants. The voices that had once whispered criticism now echoed praise and gratitude. Words of encouragement spread like wildfire, and Marcus's confidence grew with each smile he received. However, not everything was perfect. Marcus still remembered the rumors that had circulated before the event. He knew that some people, although silent in the crowd, might still carry doubts about the store's purpose. In a moment of reflection, he stepped away from the hustle and sat in a chair at the back. Kyle noticed and joined him. "Are you okay?" Kyle asked, looking at his friend with concern. "It's just that I still worry about those who aren't here today. What if they never understand what we're trying to do?" Marcus said, his voice low. Kyle thought for a moment. "You know, Marcus, sometimes people need time. What you did today is a huge step. You can't change everyone's opinion all at once. But by creating this space, you're giving more people the opportunity to feel safe to open up." Kyle's words brought a new understanding to Marcus. He realized that the impact of the event would not be instantaneous, but rather a continuous process. What he had started was a movement that could grow, and for that, it would be necessary to continue building trust and acceptance. With that thought, Marcus returned to the heart of the party. He mingled among the people, listening to their stories and encouraging them. He realized that vulnerability, which had once frightened him, was actually a powerful tool for connection. Each shared story was a brick in the construction of a stronger and more welcoming space. At the end of the day, as the store's lights began to dim and people said their goodbyes, Marcus felt a deep sense of gratitude. He bid farewell to Clara, who promised to come back for more dance classes, and to Lucas, who now felt more confident to speak in public. The joy in their expressions was contagious. When the last person left, Marcus and Kyle sat together, exhausted but radiant. "What do you think comes next?" Kyle asked. "I think we need to do this again," Marcus replied, a smile on his face. "And not just once. Let's create a regular space for people to meet, share, and grow." Kyle nodded, supporting the idea. "Yes, we can do that. And who knows, over time, we might even invite those who have doubts to join us. I believe they can see what's happening here." With a new plan in mind, Marcus felt filled with hope. He knew that the journey was just beginning, but now he had the courage and determination to move forward. He was no longer alone. Kyle's support and the connection with the community gave him strength to face any challenges that might arise. And deep in his heart, he knew that together they could transform the store into a true home of welcome and overcoming, where vulnerability would become the path to strength and unity. As the Stride and Soul store remained silent after the goodbyes, Marcus sat in one of the chairs reflecting on what had happened. He had started the day full of insecurities and doubts, but now, looking at what he had created, a new feeling enveloped him. He realized that the vulnerability that had once scared him was now a bridge to deep connections. Every shared story, every laughter echoing in the store, was a sign that his vision was coming to fruition. The transformation that Marcus experienced was more than personal. It was a change in the atmosphere of the community. That store, which had once been just a physical space, had become a home for many, a place where people could feel safe to express themselves. He understood that true success was not in numbers or sales, but in creating an environment of welcome and growth for everyone. He remembered the conversations with Clara and Lucas, who now felt more confident and ready to face their own challenges. Kyle, always by his side, had also transformed. Their friendship had strengthened throughout the journey, and the way they supported each other became a powerful example of how unity can bring about significant change. They were ready to create regular events, but more importantly, they were determined to continue spreading the message that being vulnerable is a sign of strength. As the days passed, Marcus began to notice changes in other people in the community. Those who had once hesitated to participate started joining in the activities, bringing new stories and experiences with them. The environment became increasingly inclusive, and the voices that had once been critical were now full of encouragement. The vibrant energy of the store attracted new members, and the feeling of belonging grew day by day. But not everything was perfect. A group of people still held distrust. Marcus knew that for them, the transformation of the store might seem superficial. Instead of giving up, he saw this as an opportunity. He organized a new activity, a discussion panel, where everyone could express their concerns and opinions. He wanted those who felt on the margins to also have the chance to be heard. The night of the panel was intense. The voices that had once been murmured became open dialogues. Marcus listened to the criticisms and doubts, but also shared his own journey and the changes he had witnessed. Over time, the barriers began to fall. Empathy spread, and by the end of the night, some of those who had doubted approached Marcus to thank him for creating a space where their voices could be heard. The sense of accomplishment Marcus felt at that moment was indescribable. He had managed not only to overcome his own insecurities, but also to transform the perception of an entire community. The Stride and Soul store had become a symbol of overcoming and acceptance, and he was determined to continue this mission. As the night came to a close, Marcus realized that the true revenge against those who had doubted him was not to prove them wrong, but to show that they too could come together and grow. Instead of focusing on what could be seen as failures, he chose to celebrate every small victory and turn every criticism into an opportunity for dialogue. He invited everyone to reflect on their own journeys and share their stories. Each of us has a valuable experience, he said, and it is in sharing that we find strength. In the end, he made an appeal. If you also feel inspired by this journey, like and share your own experiences in the comments. Let's together build a space where everyone feels welcomed and valued. Together we can make a difference. And remember, your voice is important. Let's take action now and be part of this transformation.